Hello there. Good afternoon, Devworld. How y'all doing? Good. All right, so today's panel discussion will involve the future of AI. Will AI take over our jobs? Will it transform the world in methods and ways we've never anticipated before? We'll find out today. My name is Patrick van Everdingen. I'm today's host for the session. Yes, this image is AI generated because that's super hip apparently nowadays. I work for passionate people as a front-end AI engineer. We are a JavaScript and TypeScript consultancy firm, and we co-organize this event. All right. Does this work? Yeah. So today's panel discussion will cover a numerous amounts of topics. We're going to talk about the future collaboration of humans and AI, the replacements of humans by AI, future applications of AI, responsible AI, and will also be open for Q&A from the audience. Because today's session is an interactive session, I invite all of you to join Menti. You can scan the QR code and submit questions in the Menti user interface, so we can ask these questions to our AI panelists later during the session. All right, so let's start with a small question. What is your job title? I'm curious to see what audience we have here today. I guess most of the attendees will be software engineers. Also quite some others. Curious to know what that is, but I think most of you will be software engineers. Very good, very good. All right, we'll start with our first panelist of today. And today's first panelist is Linus Ekenstam. He's deeply involved in the fields of generative AI and product design with a focus on innovative technologies. He's based in Barcelona, Spain, and he's garnered substantial following on LinkedIn. And he is quite involved with the impact of Apple Vision Pro on the VR and AR industry, the effective use of ChatGPT, and the significance of Magic Leap in the human-computer revolution. Second up, Ian Sleebe. Ian Sleebe, he's a senior solutions architect for Zoom, where he's employed for 5 years now. At Zoom, Sleebe is involved in the global architecture team and plays a crucial role in assisting customers with a variety of issues. Our third panelist today is Julia Flament-Wallin. She is an engineering leader at TomTom with a strong background in applied AI and software engineering, particularly in the domain of location technologies. She involves leading a team responsible for creating and updating traffic signs and lights on maps by integrating various data sources. And last but not least, we have...
Ta-da!
Yeah, sorry. That doesn't seem to... Yeah, Dana Mikhailova. She's a creative tech strategist specializing in generative AI and other emerging technologies. With a passion for human-centric and conscious solutions, she helps global brands to establish and run innovation labs. All right, we're going to get a warm applause for our panelists before we start off today's discussion. Okay, so hello there.
Hi.
Let's start with a very simple question. What does AI mean to you and how does it affect your daily work as a professional? Linus, would you give a start?
Yeah, what does it mean for me? I mean, I'm someone that's drinking from the Kool-Aid every single day. I probably see more AI-related news and more companies and products that most of you have seen so far. It's insane. So for me, what it means is I have a forefront, a seat at the very pinnacle of what's happening. And I've been in tech for 20 years, and I say that it impacts everything that I do currently. And I'm talking not only about the fads of ChatGPT, but also the fact that every time I open my phone and take a photo, there's like a deep machine learning stack that makes sure that my photos looks great. So yeah, if it wasn't for machine learning, I don't think I would be here right now.
Wonderful. What about you, Julia?
For me, AI means scale, I think. I really liked seeing that almost all of you are software engineers. I'm a software engineering manager, but I'm not like, I don't know, I'm drinking from the Kool-Aid. I've also worked with AI technologies for over a decade now. We didn't maybe call it those same things 10 years ago, but yeah, it means being able to scale a lot of work and build more data-intensive applications using more data, and yeah, doing more, automating manual processes. So yeah, how does it affect your daily work? I mean, we apply many different kinds of AI in our work, so it affects everything, the work of my engineers. I use many AI tools now. Yeah, so it means scale, and it's everywhere.
Wonderful. What about you, Ian? You work at Zoom. I can imagine that privacy in AI is a very hot topic.
Yep.
What do you notice about AI in your work?
So in general, for me, like everyone said, everyone's basically drinking up the Kool-Aid, probably. I think everyone on this stage at this point. But really, for me, what I see AI do is it becomes the new kind of glue for a lot of new challenges that we're seeing. So before, where we might see a specific issue, don't know really how to solve kind of that problem, right? And before it was very algorithmic, but now with machine learning, computer vision, and so many other things, NLP, we're seeing so many more solutions to problems. And that's kind of why we're also seeing such a rapid progression in technology as well, because we're seeing more options, right? Before, I might get a feature request, and I'm like, I'm not sure how we can do that. For example, very, very specific thing. This is not a roadmap item. It's just something that I've heard, and I thought it was interesting. If you have someone that's deaf talking to someone that is not deaf, the deaf person would speak in sign language. How would you understand what that person is saying if you don't understand sign language yourself? Well, what if we could use, for example, machine learning and computer vision to understand, oh, this is exactly what they're saying, you get a live transcription. We already do that for languages. We're able to translate exactly what they're saying, show you the transcript. So we're enabling the future of work by letting people really be empowered and focus more on work that's at hand, rather than focusing on how do I solve this specific issue.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
Wonderful. What about you, Dana?
yeah, I can relate to everything Guy said. I'm not going to repeat any of the thinking, but I think the difference with Gen AI these days, that general public became much more interested about AI than ever before, right? Like we had machine learning mandate to find machine intelligence from like 50s, right, mid-50s, but then general public never really cared, and now this is a topic that goes outside your office, and even with friends or with my partner who works in finance, nothing to do with tech. We still talk about AI and share the news. So I think this is also a big change on how it affects all of our lives, that it's not only the tech and data exercise anymore. And yeah.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah.
And what do you guys have to say to the people who think we are in some sort of AI bubble? Are LLMs worth the hype? Is it something that's being overlooked at? What do you think about it?
If LLMs is the hype, or
Yeah.
answer the question.
Yeah, it's
You can
funny
start.
because the conversation that I'm hearing so much is there's someone in the CTO that says, we need to do something with AI. Do it. And that's such a frustrating conversation because, Dana talked about it before, where you're trying to build a car, you have a very fancy car, you got all of this cool stuff, but if your CTO suddenly says, build a helicopter, you're like, how do I do this? So what we're seeing now is people are still ramping up, understanding how they can actually leverage AI, but definitely in the future that will be more integrated with all of the kind of job descriptions, job titles, etc. So we'll start to understand more AI, where it's now like, it's the biggest thing ever. This will be our, our future. It will kind of slow down, and like I said before, really become more of a glue rather than the solution itself.
Yeah, and to build on top of it, it's not only like about the right tools and approaches, but it's also about right motivations. We see these days many companies get a mandate from senior management. oh, we want to do something with AI. But it's not about doing something with AI, it's about solving the actual issues, because otherwise we end up in a situation when, yes, we implement AI, but does it solve any of the problems that it needs to solve? And then with all this experimentation, which undoubtedly has the place to be, you know, we should start with experimenting and building proof of concepts, but then we risk sometimes to end up with a proliferation of proof of concepts which don't actually solve any kind of issue that you have as a company.
Yeah. I mean, when people are like, we need to do something with AI, that's yeah, that's
Yeah.
then you know you're in like a hype.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're in the bubble. I think I'm biased. I definitely own NVIDIA stocks myself. So, but I think that AI now has become, I don't necessarily like the word democratized, but it's more available for more people. So, and also as senior leaders are like, we need to do more with AI, it's maybe also easier to get the go-ahead or get the, you know, get the go-ahead basically to do a POC or whatever it is, because it's a much lower bar to entry now. Whereas just a few years ago, you know, I was like struggling getting funding to projects, saying like, hey, we have this, we can solve this use case with you know, machine learning or whatever, and they'd be like, yeah, we're happy with our old data warehouse. So yeah, I don't know if we're in the bubble. Definitely hype. Yeah.
Hype, yeah.
And I'm probably part of that problem, the hype cycle creation. Like obviously, as I started with, I see a lot of companies building a lot of really insane technology that just a few years ago would not be possible. And they're doing it with very few engineers or very few people in general. And they're able to provide value, not just building something that's a wrapper and a cheap thing that anyone can replicate in half an hour, but actually building stuff that has substance. And this is something I haven't seen before. I've seen the hypes and boons in the past 15 years over a couple of cycles. And you know, we have the metaverse and we have the Web3 folks, and no harm to them, but this has such a bigger implication than any of that have ever even been close at touching on. Just the fact that it is democratized, the fact that we can access this, it's not so that it's in an ivory tower. If I want to learn how to use an LLM, I need a phone and access to the internet. I don't need anything else. That's how easy it is. And I think the problem is that through the UX that we've had with ChatGPT, most people think an LLM is a chat interface. That's what we've made. That's what the big companies made us believe. When reality, like the large language model, can be so much more. It can be the glue that Ian is talking about that lives inside of your application. It can be your coding partner that helps you create and solve problems. It's not going to be the ultimate partner in doing so, but it's going to give you a different perspective. So where I kind of disagree slightly with some of the panelists on some topics, but I think in general we agree. But the hype is real, but the change is more real. I think that's the important thing to take notice of. And with other things, we've had the luxury of waiting. So we had 5, 10 years to adapt to certain things. Here, that's not the case. The models are getting increasingly better, but the hardware that we're running these models on are going from being GPU that's made for gaming to TPUs that were meant for TensorFlow, and now to LPUs that are made for language models. And I don't think people really yet realize the differences in running something at 40 tokens per second versus running something at 1,000 tokens per second. And the cost decline of doing that also makes this a very interesting case for software building in general. I know maybe you didn't catch all of that, but the consensus is, from my point of view, that this change is here to stay.
Yeah. Wow. I don't want to steal your questions, but I actually there's something I've thought about that I wanted to have your input on, which is just how people have embraced ChatGPT as a human-computer interface, as a user interface, and I just think that developers, for example, we are used to a command line interface. For example, we're very used to Googling stuff. we've been doing that. Normies have been Googling as well, but they haven't, used the command line interfaces, CLIs, and all of that, or even like, writing code since the 80s when you had to when you had to do that. And I don't know, I just feel like people like it.
Yeah.
We've had point and click for like 10 plus years. Then like the whole 2010s were all about touch, and now people can use language to interact with computers. And again, and I think people like it. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. I think we've gone full circle, right? Like we started with the command line and DOS. We did all the GUIs, and now we're back at the command line again. But if you think about it, in the last 10 years, all we've been doing on our screens is basically either consuming video or media, or we've been chatting. So like we're on all these chat apps. We have many of them, and that's what we do. We do text.
Yeah.
So I think it's natural for humans to kind of embrace that. And I'm not saying ChatGPT is a bad thing. I just think the frame of it is that now everyone thinks that an LLM can only do this.
Yeah.
And that is a very dangerous place to be in, because the LLM is capable of so much more. You can have it integrally into everything that you do, and then like you surface every 100th thing to the user, and all the other stuff is just happening in the background, for example.
Wow. Seems like AI is here to stay. You all agree with that? Right, let's move on to the next question. How do you foresee the evolution of collaboration between AI systems and human professionals in the future? I mean, we have things like Copilot helping write us code, other types of software that allow us to generate images. What's your take on the nearby future regarding this aspect of AI?
So I can take a very quick Zoom kind of perspective of this, of course, because Zoom. What we're seeing more and more is we're going to talk probably a bit more about work replacement later. But what you're seeing is, especially for office workers, where previously they had to take all of these notes, they had to write extensive types of papers, they had to write very specific kinds of things, they had to do very repetitive tasks. A lot of that work can now be taken over by AI, and it's not necessarily everything's going to be taken over, but it's going to be done just a lot quicker. You can then focus more on the actual work at hand, the actual work you want to focus on, right? So be more creative, have more meaningful conversations, and really empower more the people rather than the tools themselves. I'm sure most of you are also developing tools internally just to, do something that will work in the process, but is that process really needed for every single step of the way, right? So we're seeing more and more of that longer term process that takes 10 million steps to finalize, kind of wrap down to shorter term stuff, and as well as letting people really be a lot more creative. So
it is also interesting because as you speak, like even from the question, right, collaboration between AI systems and humans, we immediately think of a work context, right, which is great because yes, indeed, many of the tasks that we perform this day will be automated by AI and are already automated, and it's a whole new field, relatively new, of human-AI interactions, and the whole talk I gave about it just now with how our role changes from creator to co-creator or orchestrator or reviewer or approver of the work that AI does. And undoubtedly, it shifts the dynamic of teamwork quite a bit, right? But then it's even more interesting, I think, to consider what kind of collaboration you have outside the office. Because we all are faced with AI. It's integrated in our everyday life, right? We all know that Amazon, Google, Apple are about to release the supercharged, powerful AI assistants that enter our homes, right? So having this supercharged machine day to night next to your kids, asking you whether you slept enough, did you eat healthy enough, when did you call your mom, and where do you draw this boundary, right? Do you take your personal AI assistant to your bedroom? So I think it's interesting to think about AI collaboration and integration and how the dynamic shifts in the office, but also beyond.
Can I flip this question? So we have a huge audience. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to us mumbling about this topic. So future is tomorrow. Today, how many of you are working, raise of hands, how many of you are working collaboratively with AI today through some kind of software? So We're not needing to talk about the future. We basically need to talk about today. So how has that impacted your line of work? How has that impacted your productivity? And where do you guys see this, girls as well, see this go for your professional in the next year or so? Because what I'm seeing is that this stuff has happened. Obviously, you're already there, half of you at least. I'm seeing this accelerating, not plateauing. I'm seeing this becoming more integral part, almost like we're becoming addicted to it in a way. Like if you talk to ChatGPT about some problems, then maybe you talk about it even more. If you start coding with an IDE that has like fancy autocomplete, then you cannot live without it. So it's like we're building this dependency with the machine. And how do we cope with that? That's kind of where my head, when I see this question, that's where I'm at.
I think about how I mean there's the replacement debate and blah blah blah, but I think that many of these AI systems also open up for more creative work, as it's been pointed out before as well. I think many AI tools, for example, is great for getting started. For example, I use it like that all the time. Like, give me a template, like, I don't know, write me a 3-year plan where the first year's focus should be A, B, C, and the second year should be blah, blah, blah. And then it, like, gives me something. And I'm like, no, actually, when I see this change, blah, blah, blah. And it's just, it's opening up more time for creative work for me, because I don't have to type all that, and I don't have to like do that and then get to like, oh, this actually sucks, let me redo it. I can do it much
it's getting
faster.
From 0 to 1, like almost instantly. And I think this collaboration part is something that's often overlooked. And maybe it's as simple as that is the biggest productivity gain. The fact that you don't have to get writer's block.
But what I will say though is Jensen, back to NVIDIA, he said a couple of days ago that like people don't need to learn how to code anymore, for example, and like kids shouldn't learn how to code. Or I don't know if he said shouldn't, but they don't need to or something. And I don't know. I feel like the ability to code is still extremely useful because it's like a way of thinking. And I also think that it's extremely useful to have, knowledge at some level. I don't know what the level is. I don't know what the level should be. But I find it very useful to know, like, okay, Google is a search engine. I know how the ranking algorithm works. I also know that it's going to feed me, advertisements and stuff like that. I know how it works, so I kind of know how I expect. And the same with LLMs. Like, I know the underlying technology, and I think that gives me an edge in how I'm able to interact with it and not. Because if you think that it's magic, like, it's not magic. It's
not magic yet, no? Like, we still understand how code is being written. What happens when we don't? What happens when...
But we already don't, but it's still not magic.
It's still not magic, it's very true. For people that lived 100 years ago, they think all of this is magic. So for people living 100 years from now, they will look at us and look like, hey, Stone Age people, why did you do that?
It's interesting to hear the discussion that's happening over there. But I think we are a little bit mixing like two topics at the same time, which is a very interesting way to discuss it as well. But like there is AI for productivity and creativity. And like if we talk about, like automation of everyday tasks, and I think the reference from NVIDIA was not that we don't need coders anymore and that kids don't need to learn to code, but that there is a certain like amount of quite boring developing tasks, and it can be in any domain, whether you're a software engineer or if you're a visual designer and you need to make basic screens or PowerPoints, right? Like, I don't mind if this part is automated, right? And then it creates more space for you to create something better. So, and many, kind of same, right? But then that maybe the true creators, who come up with new movements, like if we look back in the time, when the first camera was introduced to the market, the response of artists, anybody knows what the response was? Like, they were super scared. They were like, oh, we have this thing camera. We are not needed anymore. But then new guys came on board, like Impressionists and Cubists, and they showed that there are different ways to do that. It's not only about representing reality as is, but there are many interesting new approaches how you can represent the feeling and reality, right? So I'm very curious how it will open up the world for engineers and coders, right? What would be this new movement that can appear?
And we already see quite an embrace. One thing I find interesting about this question is that we're also very much focusing on professionals. Of course, we're all professionals working in this field, doing a lot of stuff with AI. But think about the people you have in your environment. How many of those are actually leveraging AI, right? And that's not just doing it in their work, but really when they go out, when they have specific conversations, do they use ChatGPT to maybe apply for a new job? And what will that look like in the future? I forgot the name of the product, but there's this new lapel coming out. Most of you have probably seen it as well, where you got a tiny camera and it's looking at what you're doing exactly, and it can basically say, that's an orange, that is not good for for eating, or stuff like that, right? So I'm also seeing a lot of that kind of stuff become more embraced by normal people, right? People that are not technology efficient or don't know what's happening. So I do find that kind of progression also very interesting. These people are very privacy conscious. They're like, I don't want my data stolen. I don't want another Cambridge University thing to happen again, right? But they are embracing these kind of new, Midjourney, Dolly, whatever it is, to do a lot of new, cool, fun stuff. And I think that's something that we also have to think about when we talk about AI. Not just focus on this, but focus on, everything around us.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's difficult when you get trapped in this question because obviously I know more people that doesn't work as engineers that use AI than engineers using AI. Yeah, definitely agree. I think my mom actually used ChatGPT more than anything else.
Yeah.
Like, she basically doesn't even know how to. He doesn't own a computer. She just uses everything on her phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think based on what you all said, it seems that AI will change the lives of all the people in the world drastically, not just as engineers, but also the common peoples. All right, let's proceed to the next question. So yeah, technological developments in AI are going super fast. I remember giving a talk about a AI framework at a meetup a couple of months ago. I now realize that most of the things I mentioned there are horribly outdated. How do you ensure that you and your engineers and your product team keep up with all the latest advancements? Things are going so fast.
So here, I think that software engineers have an edge because we are already used to having to learn new stuff all the time. Like basically, if you're not embracing a growth mindset as a software engineer, right, you're gonna be behind because there's always new frameworks and new languages and like this is normal in our line of work. So I think we have to continue on that and don't be afraid to dive like deeper into topics that you don't necessarily know. And I think like I'm representing management here, let's say. So I'm definitely also I want to not only encourage but also kind of require that people take the time to do that work, and that also takes time. So yeah, I think we just have to.
And I like that you have a growth mentality. I think that's very true with everyone that I work with as well. But I think next year when I get here, I want to see all hands up in the air. I don't want to see half of the audience raising their hands. So please build on that growth mentality. And I also think to the point where like if management comes and tell you we need to build something with LLMs and you go scratch your head, I have no idea what we need to build. It's a very good opportunity to be 5 years old and throw out all the Lego on the floor and find some time and just try to piece something together, whether it's valuable or not, because it will give you the insights to actually interact with these things, and then you can decide whether or not it was worth it. So, and then you can go to management to say, hey, I built this really cool thing. What do you think? Should we deploy it in production? Yeah.
The entry level is so low right now. There's so many open source solutions. There's so many, like AWS obviously costs money, but there's so many like developer accounts out there. So just playing with that Lego that's out there, has never been as easy as it has been today for developers especially. So.
Simplest API in the world, no? Text in, text out.
Yep.
But I also think that software engineers, for example, really need to get out of their comfort zone and start maybe working in different ways. Because working with LLMs might be kind of fundamentally different than their regular work that they've been used to. So for example, in my company, there's a principal staff engineer who is he's very experienced. He has more than several decades experience as a software engineer. And recently kind of through it all, I'm sure his experience came in handy, of course, but he developed a new product basically for TomTom that's LLM based, and the development cycle was just very different than what you're used to. So I think that's necessary as well. Just it's different. Get into it.
Yeah.
And actually, it's interesting that the question is phrased regarding engineers. Well, if you look at the company, right, and if you see engineers are the first one to adopt it because they're curious, they know about it, they want to learn, they will read news themselves, they don't need buy-in from management, for instance, maybe an HR department, right? So I think it's important that when we think of adoption of AI and the development as an organization, that we don't focus on engineering departments because these departments will natively adopt it themselves, if you see my point here, right? And then it's interesting to look at how we can ensure successful adoption of AI in other parts of organization. For instance, in the company I work for at EPAM, I think they did incredible job. We had a very strong leadership buy-in for this. Literally every person, doesn't matter if you work at operations, if you're an experienced consultant, everybody had to do prompt engineering course. Everybody uses Microsoft Copilot. Everybody is encouraged to try and experiment. And we collectively, as a company of 50,000 people, we do hackathons where we see how we can automate our everyday work and so on. So I think that it would be great to see more initiatives like this, but not only in tech companies.
Also would say that AI for me, the tooling that you can build with AI is probably one of the first time I've ever seen the Venn diagram kind of close in on itself. So if you have all the functions in a company, and let's the simplest worldview, right? I think I showed it on my slides yesterday. It's design, engineering, and business. And there's a slight little overlap in the middle. With AI tooling, you can just crunch that, and you get AI tools in the center, which means business folks can contribute to code, designers can contribute to business, and it just makes communication a lot faster, and you reduce the kind of friction that you ultimately have when you're working with different functions. And it's not that the code that's being produced needs to be production ready, but I need to be able to communicate as a designer with an engineer without even speaking the language, but I can get my idea into something that is easier to communicate than maybe perhaps just my ideas as a designer. Same with business. They are close to where the action is. They're close to the customers. They might have really good ideas, but they're not good at designing and they're not good at developing, but they can get closer to communicate ideas. So I think in the organizations, we will see this massive kind of crunch and implosion where people are just mashing the lines and blurring where value comes from and ideas. So I think we're going to end up with a more of an ideometrocracy where ideas matters more because we can communicate them better, because it boils down to communication in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hey.
It's a cultural shift, not only about the tooling in the center, right?
Yeah, speaking of shifts, I was curious, the audience. What do you guys all think? Will AI replace our jobs and make our work obsolete? Or will most of you think that AI will become an augmentation of our daily work? You can all vote.
Do
Curious
vote.
about things. Do vote.
There's so many people here. I want to see votes.
Yeah. At least 100.
Let's go.
Okay. Quite some people
It's
think the AI will replace.
the blue bar is kind of
It's coming for
extreme,
you.
I guess.
I'm curious what your job
This is the
if you
NVIDIA
think
chart.
it
This
will
is
be
the
replaced.
It's coming. More people will go vote for blue.
Did
No,
you
I'm
know,
not
by
going
the
to
way,
change
as we
you.
go, fun fact, which job is the hardest to be replaced by AI?
Plumbers. Plumbers are not going to get replaced anytime soon.
No.
Which one?
plumbers.
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 Yeah.
What kind of?
Yeah.
Carpenters, nurses,
Yeah,
like there's a lot of
really?
jobs that I think that are repetitive, robotic. Even with humanoids, will not be
Yeah.
able to get to replace these jobs within the next decade or two. Ultimately, we are seeing a lot of jobs that I think are up for kind of disruption, but closest to now, I think the high-skilled jobs are the first ones to go.
Yeah,
What do you-
that's like a big shock, I guess, of how the evolution of AI is going, because just 5
yeah.
years ago, the assumption was that automated, boring, kind of work in factories,
Yeah.
those kind of jobs are going to be replaced by AI. And actually, it's the complete opposite. Like lawyers,
Yeah.
engineers, the high-paid. Yeah.
It's like funny if you look at it. If you have a lot of experience, you're probably going to get outdated because your willingness to learn new things might be lower. If you're complete new and you're kind of entering this world of any job that's a high-skilled job, you're running the risk of never becoming as smart as the AI. So you're very safe if you're in the middle. That's my assumption currently. If you're, you will want to adapt, so you will be able to hang on, and you're not too noob enough that you can't. Yeah.
Regardless of what will happen, companies are never run by robots, right? You'll always want to talk to people. People are the ones that are actually coming up with innovative ideas. They could be, helped by AI to ideate and everything, but people will always want to talk to humans. That's what we're here for, right? Humanity, not necessarily
Also, software
more money.
Also, software engineering is so much more than hands-on keyboard, just committing code 7.5 hours a day. I mean, it's more than that.
All right. I think we have come to the point where we can answer a question from the audience. I will go to my laptop and see which question is most upvoted.
Officially, it's a hairdresser.
Yeah, hairdressers
Yeah.
are not
Oh,
going to
that's it,
get.
that thing.
They are not going to go. No.
No.
Oh,
Yeah.
my
Need
barber
them.
is
Well.
ridiculous.
If I remember the Jetsons, you got the almost hair printing, so maybe, who knows?
I think about that guy who
Want-
makes these impossible
Want to bring
machines
some
that is
hair?
like making this hairdresser robot, and he sits in it, and I'm like, I would never sit in that thing. I would like,
No.
Yeah.
running the risk of dying.
Yeah.
We have one really interesting question, I think. How close are we to achieving artificial general intelligence? The one question to end them all. What is your take on this?
I'm not sure if that's a good question. How do you define AGI, guys? Anyone have a definition?
How do
Who
you?
was the question?
I think we are far. I think we're far. I'm like, he's drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm pouring it out. I think we're very far from achieving AGI. Basically, the LLMs are definitely doing some interesting things, like learning languages they weren't supposed to learn and stuff. But no, I think we are far from AGI. Maybe I'll eat my words in a few years, but yeah.
The other question is, if we really want AGI anyway, is that really something that we should strive for and something that we would want? Or is AI in general, is that what we really want out of these kind of solutions?
Yeah.
I think that's another interesting question.
It's a very interesting question. I think it depends on how we see civilization progressing. Do we see humans becoming trillions in the solar system like some people want to, or do we see humans becoming 1 billion on the planet and we're living in a utopia? It's a very difficult question. Julia thinks we're far away. I think there are people in this world that are very close to solving this. And I don't think it's going to end up the way that the science fiction proposed it for us. I think we're going to see it in a very different limelight. Sora, I think, as a model, as a world model, is very close to understanding the world. And I'm not sure if you know this, but both DALL-E and Sora are models that are not meant to generate anything for humans. They are built as test models to know how much the underlying model knows about itself. So DALL-E was built as a test to test the LLM. And Sora, in many ways, is also a way to kind of test the LLM to understand, like, does it understand the world around us? So the residual capabilities of these models is that we got image generation from DALL-E 3, and now we're getting video generation from Sora, but that was never the intent. So I think it's impossible to say the future, but if some people say 2045, I kind of in the 2030 camp, 2030
But
camp.
even if we get like AGI, I mean, it's not gonna be like the intelligence that humans has, because first of all, we haven't even mapped the human brain, and we're far from being able to do that. And the brain is not the only organ that humans use to think. And also, we have at least 6 senses that we use. So, yeah.
This is a very interesting space. Thank you for opening this box. I know we're getting close in time, but it's getting interesting. So, for many years, researchers thought like to be able to create some kind of intelligence, we need to replicate the brain, because the brain is this mysterious thing we know nothing about. And it's still true, we know nothing about it, very little. And then it comes down to compression. So we built this amazing zip machine that zips stuff and make it really tight and compressed and dense, and we can mimic intelligence. We don't know what type of intelligence we're mimicking, but we know that just through the act of compression and then recompressing it, we have what is today an LLM, because an LLM is basically a large compression engine that is very lossy. So that we think that we need to replicate the human brain to replicate AGI or even superintelligence, I think it's a false.
Yeah, but that's my point, right?
Yeah.
Even if we get like AGI, it's gonna be different than
It's going to be a
human.
completely different.
If I also may
Human
say
intelligence.
something. Yeah, so I think it's very interesting what you say, and I agree a lot with Julia, because actually, Julia, sorry, because actually there are also like studies at MIT on the way that nature talks, you know, the oldest languages we have, and how, for instance, if a plant is diseased in the beginning of the forest, how on the other side of Amazonica forest, the plants will already develop, like, I'm not a biologist, okay, but basically they already develop some components to protect themselves from this disease. So it is a language, but it is a different language than human language, right? However, to the point that you were making earlier, I think that there are 2 things that will help us to get closer to AGI sooner, if we want it. The first one, indeed, invest in at least 1% of money we invest in understanding artificial intelligence to understand our own intelligence. And second, as a society, to stop trying to chase the quantity and focus on the depth. Because if we see today with content generation and LLMs, it's about the quantity of the output. Of course, it is about the quality as well, right? But it's not about the depth of experience. And when the depth will be there, then we would be closer to the intelligence, if it makes sense.
Totally.
All right. Very, very interesting discussion it has been. I'm sure you all want to continue with this discussion.
I think we're just getting started.
We're just getting started.
People are showing up
maybe
finally. Like
maybe that's one for the next edition of Devworld. We've reached the end of today's panel discussion. Thank you all so much for your input and this valuable lessons we've learned. Can I get a warm applause for our panelists, please? Thank you all.